What's up everyone, welcome back to the Carnarium. I'm Waste and I got another video for you today. Today we're going to be talking about the new bracket system unveiled by the Commander format panel. It's been about a week since the system was revealed, and there have been a lot of varying opinions on it around the Magic community. So today I'm going to break it down for you guys and give you my thoughts on the whole system. First, let's do a really quick overview of the bracket system. I'm sure most of you have already heard about it by now, but some of you might not have heard about it, so let's go over it real quick. So the bracket system is meant to replace the old Commander power level system of ranking your deck 1 through 10. There are lots of videos out there about why this system was bad, but the main reason why it didn't work is because no one could really honestly gauge the power level of their own deck, and so everyone called their deck a power level 7. So you would end up getting games with people where everyone said their deck was a power level 7, but in actuality some were 9s, some were 6s, some were 5s, and it kind of just made for an unbalanced gameplay experience. So this bracket system is aiming to fix that, and instead of focusing on power level like the old system, it's focusing on desired gameplay experience. So bracket 1, this bracket is for your meme decks. It's for your decks where you're doing crab tribal, or every card in my deck has a circle in it. This bracket is for decks that are not trying to win, but rather show off their deck or their unique theme. These decks are inherently underpowered, and the games will last a long time. Specifically, this bracket bans mass land denial, chaining extra turns together, no 2-card infinite combos, no cards off the game changers list, which we'll go over in a second, but allows a few tutors. And this bracket is aptly named the exhibition bracket, because its sole purpose is to show off your unique theme or your weird niche deck. Bracket 2 is called the core bracket. This bracket is supposed to be the power level of modern day precons. This bracket also excludes mass land denial, chaining extra turns together, 2-card infinite combos, and any card on the game changer list. This bracket also allows a few tutors. So the main difference between bracket 1 and bracket 2 is that bracket 2 is more powerful, the decks are more synergy focused, and there is an element of wanting to win the game. It's not the sole goal of the deck, but it is a goal of the deck, versus bracket 1 where it's not really a goal at all. Bracket 3 is the upgraded bracket. This is supposed to represent a bracket where you have a precon that you've upgraded or a deck that you've specifically built around a synergistic theme. I feel like most decks will eventually land in this bracket. Most players that I play against are looking for a game that's more powerful than precon level, but definitely not as powerful as you can go in Commander, where there's no holds barred and you can play whatever you want. So this bracket changes things up. It still excludes mass land denial and chaining extra turn spells together. However, you can have late game 2-card infinite combos. In this bracket, you're allowed to have 3 cards off the game changers list, which I'll put up on the screen now. So this is the game changers list. Just quickly looking at it, you can tell a lot of these cards are powerful, and a lot of them are 1/2 of a 2-card infinite combo. You can see in the colorless section, there's a lot of fast mana, which is indicative of a higher powered deck. But in bracket 3, you're allowed to choose a maximum of 3 cards off this list and put them in your deck and still have it be legal for that bracket. Bracket 4 is called the optimized bracket. So in this bracket, there are no holds barred. You can play any card you want off the game changers list. The only restriction is banned cards. This bracket is trying to play as powerful as possible without going full cedh. And then bracket 5 is cedh. Technically, the rules for bracket 4 and bracket 5 are the same, except cedh is a specific meta-focused format. You can't just show up with your favorite commander that's been super optimized with the most powerful cards in existence. You're still going to lose. cedh commander decks require building around an already existing meta, where you're going to see a lot of the same commanders or commander partners. Winning is the most valuable thing in this bracket, and it's what will probably be used for tournaments moving on into the future. Okay, so what do I think of the bracket system? I could have made a video the day that it came out and insta-reacted to it like everyone else did, but I decided to take some time and really think about it. And after thinking about it for a bit, I came to the conclusion that I really like the intention of the system. I don't think the system is perfect, but I think Wizards kind of admitted that when they built the system. It is still in beta, and if you watch Gavin Verhey's video, he talks about this in the video. Link in the description. If you haven't watched that video, it's really insightful. It's like 30 minutes long, and Gavin goes over a bunch of different topics to explain potential questions that Commander players would have about the new system. But like I said before, this system is replacing the old power level system of 1 through 10. That system was based on power level, and there's just inherent flaws with Commander players trying to determine the power level of their own deck, especially with no guidelines on what power level means. For example, a lot of people consider Swords to Plowshares one of the most powerful removal spells ever made. However, in Commander, it's totally fine. It is good, but it's not game-breakingly good. It's just a 1-for-1 removal spell. However, there are cards that are game-breakingly good, and it's not really obvious that those cards are game-breakingly good unless you've played a lot of Commander. And if you look at the Game Changers list, a lot of the cards on there are those game-breaking cards. Rhystic Study is a great example. This card went unnoticed for decades after it came out. It was never really considered a great card in Magic's history. However, if you've ever played a game where someone got down a Rhystic Study, especially early, you know that 3-mana enchantment draws them like 20 cards over the course of the game. And even if people pay the 1, you're still taxing everyone 1 extra mana for each of their spells. So either way, it's super good. It either draws you a bunch of cards or it taxes the entire table until someone can remove it. That card really does change the game. So a lot of people had these cards in their decks, but because they were running a really vanilla commander, they either naively thought that their deck was underpowered, or they were just kind of fudging the truth about how powerful their deck was. So you would get games where you had a bunch of mismatched decks and it wasn't really fun for anyone. Everyone was expecting a different kind of experience and none of them were getting it. So with this new bracket system that focuses more on gameplay experience, I believe that we can start to tap into the root of what makes Commander fun, playing against other opponents who are on the same page as you. And just a reminder, this system is really meant for playing with randoms, for playing with people that you don't know. If you have a regular play group where everyone's kind of on the same page about the power level of your decks, you really don't need this system. This is meant for people who go to their local LGS and they're trying to play a game and they're meeting 3 new people and they're all trying to get on the same page about what to play. That can be a really difficult conversation. One, to talk with random people, strangers that you've never met before, but also try to get on the same page about the power level of your decks. So now when a player goes to their local LGS, they have a concrete tool to determine what kind of deck they have and what kind of decks other people have. For example, if I bring a deck that has no game changers and it's not a themed deck that fits in bracket 1, then it's got to be a bracket 2 deck. So right away I'll sit down with the other players at the table and I'll say, hey, I brought a bracket 2 deck. It's basically pre-con level and it fits into the bracket 2 criteria. Then the other players can talk about what they brought and we can all get on the same page about what kind of game we're looking to play that day. Maybe someone brought a bracket 3 deck, but it's kind of underpowered compared to other bracket 3 decks. So they think it'll be okay in a bracket 2 pod. Then we can all rule 0 and figure out if that's cool and then get a game started. And we'll roughly all be the same power level. I think focusing on the desired gameplay experience instead of power level is a huge step in the right direction for the evolution of Rule 0 and power level ranking. I definitely build my decks around a desired gameplay experience, and I never really thought about it until I saw the bracket system. For example, I usually build my decks to fit right in category 3. I don't really mind if people play more powerful cards. I just don't want them to play every single powerful card they can imagine, because to me that's a little bit more competitive than I'm looking to play. I really like theme decks and synergistic decks that have been upgraded and have a key goal that they're trying to achieve. I like that players want to win the game, but I also want it to be casual and like a hangout with friends. I really like bracket 3, and that's probably where I'll gear most of my commander decks to fit. The only thing I would change about bracket 3 if it were up to me is I would have no infinite combos allowed. And to be clear, what I mean by infinite combos is like Thassa's Oracle. You demonic consultation, you Thassa's Oracle, you win the game on the spot, unless someone has a counterspell. Those types of infinite combos, where they win the game on the spot, they ignore everything else that happened in the game prior to those cards being cast. And I really want to play commander games where the board state matters. Nothing feels worse than playing a game for 7 turns, everyone's got a big board built up, people are politicking, trying to gain advantage, trying not to seem like the arch enemy, and then all of a sudden someone combos and wins the game out of nowhere. It makes me feel like, why do we even play this game if you're just gonna combo win? That combo had nothing to do with anything else that happened in the game. I do think there's a place for that, and based on these new brackets, that would be bracket 4. Some people like playing against that. They build their decks to interact with those types of combos, but I don't feel like most commander players do. I feel like most commander players are looking for the quote-unquote battle cruiser experience, where the main way to kill people is by reducing their life total to 0. And let me juxtapose what I just said against some combos that I actually run. Not all combos are infinite combos that win the game on the spot. So in my Florian deck, I run Wound Reflection and Fraying Omnipotence. If I have a Wound Reflection down and I cast Fraying Omnipotence, it makes every player lose half their life total rounded up. And if I get to my end step, Wound Reflection will trigger, and each of my opponents will lose half their life total rounded up again, reducing all of my opponent's life totals to 0. But the key difference between that 2-card combo and something like Thassa's Oracle is my 2-card combo can be interacted with. Like I said, Thassa's Oracle wins the game on the spot unless someone has exactly a counterspell and the mana to cast it. Even though Thassa's Oracle is an enter the battlefield trigger, the trigger goes on the stack. So even if you remove the Thassa's Oracle while it's on the battlefield, you still have to deal with the trigger. And it's the trigger that's going to win you the game. You either have to counter the Thassa's Oracle while it's on the stack, or counter the trigger once it goes on the stack. There's very few ways to stop that from happening. However, with Fraying Omnipotence and Wound Reflection, there are ways to interact with it. You can counter the Wound Reflection, you can counter the Fraying Omnipotence, but you can also remove the Wound Reflection from the battlefield. I have to cast Fraying Omnipotence at sorcery speed, which means I have to cast it in one of my main phases, and then I have to get to my end step. So you can either somehow kill me before I get to my end step, you can remove the Wound Reflection, you can gain life. If you let Fraying Omnipotence resolve, and then before I get to my end step you have a way to gain life for yourself, that will offset the math. So when Wound Reflection triggers, you'll lose the life you already lost, but that won't be all your life total because you gain some life back. You can also cast a spell like Teferi's Protection. So there are a lot more ways to interact with my 2-card combo, and my 2-card combo costs 11 mana total. And it's very unlikely that I'm going to cast both Wound Reflection and Fraying Omnipotence in the same turn. It's much more likely that I'm going to cast Wound Reflection earlier in the game before I cast Fraying Omnipotence. So the table will have even more time to remove the Wound Reflection, and my play will be much more telegraphed. They're going to want to remove it anyway because the way Florian works is it does a bunch of damage to everyone each turn, so they're going to be losing a ton of life if they don't get rid of it. I just wanted to draw that distinction of how I interpret 2-card infinite combos. 2 cards can combo with each other, but if it wins you the game instantaneously and there's very few ways to interact with it, that to me is too high of a power level for bracket 3. If you have a 2-card combo that costs a lot of mana and doesn't win you the game immediately, but has the potential to win you the game, that's okay, as long as there's a reasonable way to interact with it. So as an exercise, I thought we could take a look at my actual Florian Rakdos Group Slug deck, which is currently listed as an estimated bracket 4 on Moxfield. Moxfield is one of the cool deck builders that has incorporated the bracket system already into their deck building tool. So if you put your deck list in the deck builder, it will show you what your estimated bracket is. And right now it's showing that I have 1 Game Changer and 1 Mass Land Denial card in Obliterate. Obliterate is an 8 mana sorcery, can't be countered, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and lands. I talk about why this card's in the deck in my full breakdown of my Florian build, but essentially it's a finisher in the deck. I don't ever cast it unless I have the perfect board state to cast it, and then it wins me the game. So right now, if I just took out Obliterate and replaced it with some other spell, this deck would instantly go down to a bracket 3. And that's what I did. I took out Obliterate and I replaced it with Toxic Deluge, which isn't originally in the deck. And now it's saying my deck is an estimated bracket 3. And the reason why it's a bracket 3 is because it has 1 Game Changer in Glacial Chasm. It's kind of cool, they actually mark the card with this little symbol right here. Glacial Chasm, for anyone who's not familiar, is a land. It doesn't tap for any mana and has cumulative upkeep of 2 life. When Glacial Chasm comes into play, I have to sacrifice a land. I can't attack, however, all damage dealt to me is reduced to 0. So this card is incredibly powerful. It works really well in Florian because I do a lot of damage to the table, including myself. It works as a permanent fog, so anyone attacking you doesn't do any damage to you. Anyone doing direct damage to your life total doesn't do any damage to your life total. But I understand why this card is on the Game Changer list. Lands are very hard to interact with. A lot of players don't put cards that deal with lands into their decks. And so against a lot of players, this is just a card they cannot deal with. Little side note, I do run cards that deal with lands like this in my decks, but that's besides the point. So if I wanted to take this bracket 3 deck and put it down to bracket 2, all I'd have to do is take out this Glacial Chasm and replace it with another land. And so that's what I did, took this Florian Rakdos Group Slug deck down to bracket 2. It says right here, it's estimated bracket 2. It does say no 2-card combos, so I would technically have to take out the Fraying Omnipotence Wound Reflection combo. As you can see, the tool can't really track what a 2-card combo is. That would be difficult to program. But I know that that's technically a combo. It's not an infinite combo, but it probably is too powerful for bracket 2. So ignoring that for now, I took out the Glacial Chasm and I just added in a basic swamp, and now my deck is rated at a bracket 2. I would of course have to take out the combos, but there's only 2 cards in the deck that really cause the combo to happen, so it would be an easy swap out for something else that does direct damage to everyone at the table. And then my deck would be ranked bracket level 2. Obviously that's way too easy to go from bracket level 4 to bracket level 2 just by changing out a couple cards. I think honestly, even with those cards being changed, my deck is still a power level 3 in any of those configurations. Like I said, the Obliterate's really only in there as a finisher in the deck. Obviously that's a very brutal card, and that deserves to be in bracket level 4, so taking that out puts me squarely in bracket level 3. I have 1 Game Changer, and the deck is definitely an upgraded deck. It's very focused on its theme, and it has some powerful cards in there that aren't necessarily on the Game Changers list. They're just powerful with Florian. And while I can take out some cards and put this deck in bracket level 2, I feel like that would be disingenuous to bracket level 2. Bracket level 2 is really supposed to be pre-con level power level, and if you've ever played a pre-con or looked at the deck list for pre-con, they're basically super clunky synergistic decks. Most pre-cons are not very good commander decks. Something that's very common for players to do is buy a pre-con and then upgrade it to make it more focused and synergistic. So pre-cons can be powerful if you take out some of the cards and put in better ones in there, but in their base form, they're not very powerful, and this deck is more powerful than a standard pre-con. I just wanted to use this as an exercise to show that it's very easy to go between brackets, and so the onus is really on the players. I've watched a lot of videos of people complaining about this system, saying that it's imperfect, that people are going to game the system, it's too easy for people to be dishonest. And I agree with all of that. Gavin goes over this in his video. He talks about how there's no way to police bad actors. This system is not supposed to be a clear-cut rule set for how to play Commander, rather a guideline on how to find games that fit into the gameplay experience you're looking for. And so the onus is on us as players to use the system as it was intended so that we get what we want out of the system. If we immediately go and try to break the system, which is what Magic players love doing, then the system doesn't work. I guarantee you, I could build an extremely powerful Bracket 1 deck. But again, that's not the point of Bracket 1. And so as players, we have to ask ourselves, does this deck that I just built genuinely fit in Bracket 1? It fits all the check marks to fit in Bracket 1, but is it truly a Bracket 1 deck? The answer is probably no. And so I think this tool is really good at capturing the essence of that, even in its beta form. I do think the tool needs tweaking. I don't think the Game Changers list is detailed enough. Somehow green dodged being on the list for the most part, even though it's the most powerful color in Commander. And like I said before, I really don't think Bracket 3 should allow any kind of infinite combo, even late game ones. I know the game has to end at some point, but I think most players want the game to end where the board state mattered in how the game ended. So those are my thoughts on the new bracket system. Overall, I like it. I do think it needs tuning, like I said, but I think it's going to prove better than most people are thinking it will right now. Again, before anyone can truly criticize the system, we need to give it some time. Go out, play some games, see how it works. I know I've already talked to people in my Discord channel, and even just from the initial conversations of asking what kind of decks they're running and what brackets they fall into, it seems like the system is pretty decent at capturing the essence of what it's trying to do. If you like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe, like the video, leave a comment down below. Let me know whether you like the bracket system or not. What changes would you make, if any at all? And join the channel Discord if you're interested. Thanks for watching, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.